All right, so we're going to get started just because I want to make sure we're getting out of here on time. Trying to keep our schedule as best we can, 5:30 to 8 for Kathy's presentation. You received 3 handouts, a bingo board, so during the break, maybe they can do a bingo board. That's sort of like an expenditure form and a little 1-hour little token card to explain that. So I'm going to give the floor to Ms. Kathy.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, I'm Kathy Sipple, and I've had the pleasure of meeting a few of you in the past, so thanks for having me here in this capacity. This is actually the first time I've done this exact presentation, so this is a little bit historic, honestly. You'll find out a little bit more background in the why, but I'm really happy to put this together. I appreciate all of the great work that you do for the community. I know how hard some of you work through getting the experience of working with you. And I also know that it might be useful sometimes to know how to live better for less money. Is there anybody that's not at all interested in that? You're a trust fund person and you don't care. You don't need any more money. Anybody? No? Everybody wants to know about this topic? Give me a little clap if you want to know about this topic. All right. Woo. Okay. Very good. Thanks so much. All right. So this is a very non-traditional bio slide. I didn't really put my picture up there because you can see me. You don't need to have my picture up there. But just a little background about what I'm pulling into this talk today. I'm calling myself a social permaculturist. And I bet you there are maybe like fewer than 10 people in the world that have adopted that name. Has anybody ever heard of permaculture, number one? Maddie has. Yeah, you have? Okay, great. So can you say anything about permaculture or what you know about it? It kind of does, and that's what most people think about. It's a portmanteau. I really love that word. It just means like 2 smashed up words together that make one word. Usually stands for permanent agriculture in the case of that type of permaculture, but it also stands for just culture, people systems. So that's the part that I'm actually really interested in. I've taken permaculture training through the Regenerative Leadership Institute out west. I'm a Reiki master. Does anybody know about Reiki? It's kind of like healing energy. Okay. So I got this message one time that I was supposed to try to heal a community, not like heal a person. And this is kind of what I came up with, is that I think if we use social permaculture and we look to nature for some of our systems, that we could actually work stuff out. I last year got some master urban farmer training, and I think I figured out that is like way too much work for me. I am very happy to let the farmers do the work. But time banks is kind of one of my little hidden secrets and tools that is going to help make that life hacking, living better on less possible. So these things are all going to kind of tie together eventually. So basically this is, that was the long answer. If I was stuck in an elevator, you've heard of elevator speeches, I wouldn't have time to say that. So this is what I would say to hopefully catch somebody's attention. I study, teach, and co-create systems that empower people to help one another live better and make the community better too. I'm not a nonprofit. That's just kind of my jam. That's what I love to do. So if I can get work through social media that helps me do that, if I can work with nonprofit clients or just work with people, I'm always trying to do that. That's just what I'm wired to do. So tonight, our emphasis is around eating better for less. And I thought this quote from Hippocrates was kind of a good way to bring that together. Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Because how many times you go to the doctor, they're like, what's wrong? They grab the little prescription pad. And I get it. I mean, we need to have prescriptions sometimes to help us and make us better. But so many times, gosh, we could feel so much better just by eating better, But then when you try to do that, well, here, first of all, so why do I want to focus on that? I'm social permaculture. And well, first of all, it was our topic for today, but everybody eats. In time banking, you can literally use time bank for just about anything that you would want to accomplish. But sometimes trying to get people to work together, somebody wants to do woodworking, somebody else doesn't want to do woodworking. Not everybody wants to do woodworking. I can bet you just about every day this month, you're going to eat, right? And probably the same thing next month and next month. So everybody eats. It's a real, democratic leveler, basically. And the other thing is when people do not eat, they get pretty grouchy, and so that's really hard to have a happy community if some people don't either have access or they don't have time to prepare healthy meals, or they feel like they're not eating the best that they can because they can't afford it. I just really hate that. So, when we can take the edge off everybody having enough to eat and just feeling good, then we can certainly look at other ways to live well too. So you've got these handy dandy little slider things on the table. Have you guys seen those before? Those are from, I guess, Bank On. Is that right, Manny? Okay. I was actually doing a talk for my business here last week, and I grabbed one on my way out. I'm like, ooh, I'm going to put this into the talk because this is pretty cool. So I thought this was pretty neat. It just shows you how much you could save every day or every month or whatever, and what it turns into over a year, 5 years, what have you. So I just want to tell you, does anybody know how much they spend on food right now, like a month? Do you have any idea? Yeah?
Probably about 600.
600? Okay.
For 2 people, and my husband really liking
For 2 people, okay. Anybody else?
700.
700, yeah. 300? You're pretty good. Me too. Hey, I'm gonna arm wrestle you for that title, sir. But so 300 to 700, and probably some people more, possibly. If it's a special occasion month. Yeah, and then sometimes it's like, how many special occasions are there? It seems like there's always a wedding, or it's Christmas, or it's a special outing.
When you have 7 grandchildren, yes.
Yeah.
It's like every other month.
Yeah. I met a gentleman last year, and I was talking about time banking. He said, I asked him, what do you really need? He's like, we have 13 people in our household. He's like, we need food. So I think his voice is always in my head when I'm thinking about this. Like, why do we need it? Everybody needs it. So this is just one example, which, your results may be way, way, way better than this, or way less. But if you have that number in your mind, you can play with that little slider, and we're going to come back to that later. But after I show you some of these tricks, I want you to maybe play with that and say, what if I could save half? What if I could save fill in the blank? Like, what would I do with that money? So anyway, I do want to convince you that we are going to be able to do this for less. When I met my husband, I lived in Cincinnati and he lived in Chicago, and it was kind of a sticker shock kind of situation and just culture shock, because where I lived, Cincinnati, it's not like a little town, but it was relatively tame, compared to Chicago. We were living right in the loop in Chicago too. And the first weekend that I was there, he was like, could you run to the store and just pick up a few items? He gave me maybe like 8 or 10 things. And I went to this place, Whole Foods. Have you ever shopped at a Whole Foods? There's a reason why it's called Whole Paycheck, is it not? I do love it, but this is dated just yesterday. You can see it's dated 2/12/19. So, I think they are trying to be legit and make their food more accessible to people. But that day when I went there, I was like kind of devastated. I went for snacks and I spent like $80 or something. It was just, it was pretty horrifying. So as much as I appreciate good food, it was a wonderful shopping experience. I'm kind of big on the whole idea that there is no status in overpaying. If I can get those same great snacks and spend a fraction of that, nobody cares what I paid for it. That's not going to impress anybody. Or if I can feed more people or be more generous in my household, like, I don't want to spend my whole paycheck. So anyway, so we hear that it's like, eat the best food that you can afford, but then, some of the best known places that have that healthy food are called Whole Paycheck. So this is maybe dialing it back a little bit. So maybe it's not your whole paycheck, but it's saying that eating healthy versus unhealthy cost about $1.50 more per day. And, I'm not sure exactly, this is a few years old already, but that seems probably legit. You could probably think it's a whole lot more than that, depending on the discrepancy and how well you shop and everything else. So some things that I've tried to dial back that number, you know, from that first weekend in Chicago and shopping at, you know, Whole Foods, I was like, well, this is crazy. So I joined Costco, you know. Is anybody here a member of Costco or Sam's Club or anything? I mean, they have some good deals. And if you go there on days when they're giving out samples, you can kind of eat. You can make a little buffet right there, you know, not necessarily healthy, but, you know, I've tried it, and certainly they have some good stuff. And I think it's sometimes lower. I've tried being in a food co-op before. Has anybody ever tried that? It's kind of cool. Like where I went to school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, there was a place called the People's Food Co-op, and it was actually owned by the people who shopped there. And I think I had some small membership, and that was kind of neat, you know, but yeah, I don't really have time to start a food co-op. And the ones that I found are kind of virtual. They're pop-ups, so they're not terribly convenient. They wanted me to spend like $100 a month, kind of whether I wanted to buy that stuff or not. So I was buying like huge amounts of toilet paper, and, you know, it just wasn't terribly convenient. Couponing, has anybody ever watched like extreme couponing on TV? I remember my husband and I were like binge watching a few episodes, and he was like, that is incredible. He was so impressed, you know, that the shoppers, and it seems like most times they're women, not always, but they're, you know, they're taking up hours for the checkout. They're frustrating the clerk. And then they've got their whole family like jumping in garbage bins to find the coupons. And then they're spending like 30 hours a week clipping the coupons. So, you know, I got to tell you, that is not my key strategy. And then just buying in bulk. You know, I am kind of a tree hugger, so I like to just, you know, use less packaging. So these are some things I've tried. And honestly, I feel like these, you can go on Google any day of the week and you probably have seen all the stuff. So what I want to do is kind of, all right. I don't know why my slide isn't quite showing. This is supposed to be grow your own, and there's a beautiful picture of my community garden plot over here that somehow it vaporized. But what I wanted to say is, like, for those of you, it's winter. Yeah, it's not growing. Thank you. That is very legitimate. Okay. So yeah, obviously we're in Indiana. It's frosty outside. You're not going to be able to grow anything right now. And some people, if you live in an apartment or whatever, maybe you don't have land to grow a garden. Does anybody have a garden in their backyard, or community gardeners? Couple? Okay. So community.
My girlfriend has been organic. She got diagnosed with lupus. So she just started doing her stuff. So this winter, you go and you look in her pantry, it's all the stuff that she's done.
That she preserved?
I mean, she's got it from, you name it, her seasonings, her herbs.
Yeah.
She has done so much better.
Yeah. So there you go. It's let food be thy medicine. And when you grow it yourself, you completely know where it's coming from. And it's great. You know, I do realize not everybody has the time, the space, or the inclination to do that. So like one super small way you can do it, and even in Indiana in the winter, is growing sprouts. Like, have you ever bought bean sprouts, or have you ever tried this? You can grow them on your counter. I mean, all it takes is like.
We used to grow them in the cabinet.
In the what?
In the cabinet. Like
In the cabinet?
You put the seeds in. And
Yeah.
You put them like in the mason jar, and you put them in the cabinet until they sprout, and then you pull them out. It's fun.
Exactly. I mean, it's fun.
Really nutritious.
They're really nutritious. I mean, they're packed with micronutrients or macronutrients. I kind of sometimes forget. But I mean, you can get like just the seeds are dirt cheap, and you throw them in some water in a mason jar and poof, you got sprouts. So even something like that, I just want to challenge you to think about doing something a little bit. So this is my community garden. You didn't get to see the pre-garden when I had normal stuff that was more like tomatoes and cucumbers and recognizable stuff. But I started getting kind of lazy because I noticed that like birds maybe were dropping seeds in my garden and stuff was just coming up. And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I wonder what that is. So I just let it grow. I am now kicked out of this garden, by the way. They did not really want me to come back. However, I did school them a little bit. The daisies that were in the middle, I mean, those are pollinators, and in fact, they're edible. Did you know daisies were edible? All right, good for you. You guys are very smart. Apple mint. I had never really heard of apple mint, but it was there. It was growing. I didn't plant it. I'm like, well, why would I yank it? You know, it's perfectly good.
On people's like sidewalks.
Exactly. We're getting there. You're stealing my show. And then, And then Motherwort, you know, I had no idea what that was, but I looked it up, and actually Motherwort, this weed, turned out to be the most expensive thing in my garden. I looked it up, and if you were to buy Motherwort extract online, it was 8 ounces for something that's basically made with a handful of that weed that's on the right side. So I took that to my community garden people, and I was like, the cash value of my, you know, of my plot per square foot, I think is higher than Joe Schmo that's growing tomatoes. But yeah, they just didn't like it. So I moved on. That's okay. I'm out of there. This is my garden today.
Question,
Yes, sir.
what is mother?
It is kind of an amazing weed. You know, it's generally not seen as like a valuable plant, but it is a medicinal, and it actually helps with high blood pressure. It helps lower cholesterol. It helps with hot flashes, which somebody has been having, you know. So there, like all 3 of those things were occurring in my household, and there was this plant that was showing up in my backyard, and most people are just like, yank, what's this thing, you know? And it's so helpful, but it does many, many other things too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this is just an example of some of what I've got growing today is like,
This used in witchcraft?
pardon?
This used in witchcraft?
Well, you know, that's probably a whole different talk, but I think that Big Pharma wants you to think that anything that's not in a little pill is, you know, hocus pocus or witchcraft, but it's like we're taking control of our health, we're taking care of our finances, you know. So I'm not saying just go and willy-nilly put stuff in a jar and start taking it medicinally, but no, I would not say it's witchcraft, not at all. It does seem magic though, when you can turn weeds into something that actually helps you and heals you. But this stuff, this is in my backyard, and my dog, this is my dog Bodie. She thinks it's really fun to just hang out there. But I really love it that nothing that I have pointed out right here is something that I have to plant each year. It comes back on its own. And none of the stuff is actually stuff that I bought either. So if you've ever had a garden, I'm sorry, can we just have everybody in one little talk? We're going to be breaking up and doing something activity pretty soon. But the raspberries, I actually got that from something called a food swap. So I brought some food items, and a friend of mine brought raspberry bush, and so I got that, put it in my yard. The Egyptian walking onion, I actually foraged that when I was at the post office. These walking onions walk right off somebody's garden and into the parking lot. So I figured that was fair game. But like when the head matures, it actually bends down and plants itself, and then it grows a new onion plant, and then that walks. So it kind of like, yeah, I know, it's the craziest thing. But these onions, or sometimes they're called nodding onions, they just walk around and replant, and then they come back in the spring. So I'm like, what a racket that we have to buy onions when you could just plant this thing one time and you could have onions for like the rest of your life. And then borage. Have you ever had borage? It's this little sort of fuzzy leafed flower. It's got a blue flower on it, and it tastes and smells like a cucumber. You can put that in soup. You can just eat the leaves. You can make a salad out of it, and it self-pollinates. So again, I planted it once, and boom, it comes back every year. So I'm just a real sucker for how to do things easier. And then this is an example of permaculture. So back to the point of, it is agriculture, but it is, you know, people systems too.
Did you say what zone you live in? Did you say where?
I live in Valpo.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well,
This is
what do you do with it? Was that a chocolate lab?
a black lab.
What do you do with that beautiful thing in the garden?
She just hangs out. I didn't pose her there or anything. She just likes to just, you know, thank you. Yeah, we love her very much. She just puts out her good vibes, and I think she keeps the squirrels away from the raspberries, so that's helpful. But yeah, like Maddie said before, purslane, lamb's quarters, all these different things. There are all kinds of weeds that I think any one of us in this room would know exactly what this plant is, right? We all know what this is. Dandelions. And how many people are like bombing these with chemicals and everything? They're great for butterflies, but they're also 2 times the amount of calcium. Yeah, thank you. You just read the slide while I'm tongue-tied. But 3 times the vitamin A, and we're always like Popeye and the spinach and how great that is, when the poor little lowly dandelion that we're all like trying to remove from our lawns is actually way more better for you. 8 times more antioxidants. So that's just one example. And did you know that this entire plant is edible? You can actually make a coffee-like beverage from brewing the roots. You can make a wine, you can make a tea, you can, yeah, you can braise the greens, you can make fritters from the flowers, you can eat the whole darn thing. And then this I just thought was so funny, crab apples. These are right from Butterfield Park right here in town. And I get the funniest looks. Oh, is that bad that I'm doing that?
No, I was excited.
Oh, I was picking these and this little girl came up to me and she was like, are you supposed to do that? And I'm like, because it's a park or because they're crab apples and you think they're poisonous? And she's like, kind of both. Yeah, kind of both. She was very concerned. I'm like, well, number one, the seeds, like apple seeds are also a little tiny bit poisonous, but you generally don't eat the seeds. So I told her what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to make a crab apple chutney or crab apple butter. So I'm going to strain out the seeds. She's like, okay, but still, it's a park. You know, I don't think you're supposed to do that. And then I showed her on the ground. I'm like, look at all these falling on the ground. Like, it's just going to make a mess, you know? And so I actually did talk to the park director and he was like, it's fine. Please get your friends and pick all the crab apples. That would be fine. And like at Ogden Gardens here in Valpo, I like to take people there if they're afraid of foraging because they think they're going to kill their family, you know, serving them something poisonous. I'm like, that stuff is mostly labeled, you know? So if it's labeled raspberry, you can be pretty sure that's a raspberry. There are persimmon trees there. Have you ever had a persimmon? They're like they're like $1 a piece or something in the fall. And you can just go there and pick them off the tree for free in the fall. I went to Thanksgiving with foraged just that day persimmons. And I thought that was a pretty fancy, you know, special gift for the hostess. Treasure map. This plum tree was sort of bequeathed to me from a friend who moved to Atlanta. So she didn't need the stash anymore because she couldn't pick it. But she told me exactly where this was. And she said, but I could never get there when these things were ripe. Well, they're green plums. So guess what? They're never going to look like normal plums. But so now, you know, if you want to be my friend, I'll tell you where this is too. I don't like to keep this to myself. I actually like to share the treasure map, and I like for people to share all of where the free fruit is so that we don't waste any of it. And then, you know, back to your friend, you said, who preserves and shares. The top row, the middle one is cherries that were from Ogden Gardens. They're not regular cherries, but they're called cornelian cherries. And I guess they're a Persian delicacy. And nobody, again, was eating them because nobody really knew what to do with it. But you can Google it, people. You know, I Googled it. It's on the little label. And I found a recipe. And then there are those plums again. I made that into this Russian sauce that's sort of like ketchup. There's only so much of the stuff that I can use. So we're coming soon to another key thing that makes this all worth doing. But first, back to that number. You know, so eating healthy costs $1.50 more per day. I think that's just for suckers. And I think that's just a place to start because I think most people are paying more for an unhealthy diet than they even need to. So I want to really dive deep into my bag of tricks, and then we're going to play that bingo game, and it's all going to make sense pretty soon. But I need you to stick with me for just a few more things. To make this game worth it, I think it really is good to cement your why. Like if you had extra money, you know, an extra, whatever, a couple $100,000 at this time next year in 5 years, what would that mean to you? I mean, does anybody have school loans to pay? Yeah. Anybody want to buy a house eventually if you don't have one? Or, I don't know, fill in the blank, maybe go on a trip, like just anything. Is there some amount? So like, what would be your motivation? What would be an exciting amount for you to save? You can like just write this down on the back of your bingo if you want. Like what would be kind of a fun goal? And then you can use those little slider calculators to do the math for you. You don't have to do all that math. It's super fun. Have you guys looked at those things? Play with it. Just look at it. And I will just tell you, the very first time that I went to the Hope Center, which is a place Maddie mentioned, I had known about it for years, and I just thought, it can't be that worth it. I mean, there's like Strax right in town, there's Town and Country. I mean, I would pass like 5 grocery stores to get to this place. Like, why would I ever drive to this place? It's 35 minutes door to door for me to get there. I'm a tree hugger. I do not like to burn extra gas. Like, it's just dumb. But one day my husband was at work, and on a Saturday, I had nothing to do. I'm like, I'm finally going to go down to that place. I spent $100, which you might be like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But I looked up every single item online to find out what it would have cost me. It would have cost me $600, $597 to be precise. And that was with no coupons. You know, yes, it took me 35 minutes to get there and 35 minutes to get back, but it like filled up my car with food. I mean, it was a lot of food. And now when I go, I usually carpool with somebody, or I buy on behalf of somebody else, you know, to kind of allay my guilt or whatever. But that was like $500 saved in one shopping trip. Okay. So be bold with that number that you're about to write down. Because I mean, I'm going to show you something that can be really fun. So anybody have their number in mind? How much do you think you could shave? Do you just have no concept of what you even spend on
I
food?
could do 90.
You could do 90? 90 a month? Okay. So what would that be in a year, in 5 years, or 10 years? If I was a little bit quicker on the draw, I could figure that out in my head, but you know.
Yeah, I don't do that. Well, 180 a year.
Yeah, you have that little slider, right? Yeah.
90 a month. Great.
Oh, is it, it's
$21,000 a year
Oh,
for after 20 years.
20 years? Okay.
10 years would be 10,000.
And I just want to tell you, I've been doing this now for 2 years, and it has just opened up these like really creative pathways where I've made it a game. And my husband and I will have lived in our house for 5 years in June, and we're on a traditional 30-year mortgage. And I just showed him a spreadsheet like a couple weeks ago. I was like, honey, guess what? I think we're going to have our house paid off by like in 8 years. So that would be 13 years to pay it off versus 30. And it's mostly from this crazy stuff, you know? So that's what I wanted to do. That was my why. We got into our house kind of late in the game, but that's kind of life-changing, you know? That made him feel better about his work and less stressed. And so it's kind of like the one thing sort of feeds into the other. Okay, so is everybody ready to get your game on? You wanna play this game? All right. So just one more thing. I told you you're gonna play. If I unleash you, okay, I'm gonna unleash you because you're already unleashed, I can tell. But here's the thing, is that bingo game, everybody kind of know how bingo works, right? There will be some prizes too for winners. The grand prize, if you can manage to get all of this bingo filled out, let's start with, let's check in at 25 after the hour. And if you guys need more time, we can do that. You know what, Manny printed them out for me. There might be some on that shelf over there by the sink, or else we can make another one for you. So I know from talking to some of you guys that you don't necessarily know one another's names. Is that right? Do you have a database or some other way to like get with one another, or do you kind of have to go through Maddie? Or, I mean, you guys will see each other each month, I suppose, right? Write very legibly though, like write, maybe you want to write first and last name in the square. Like, let's just do an example here. May I borrow this for a minute? Okay. So, likes to cook. Who likes to cook? Show of hands. Okay, so there's a little starter. We've got like 5, 6 people that you know you can go to any one of them and you would just write their name, okay? And eats vegan or vegetarian, I just kind of wanted people to know that this is for you too. And even if you're not 100% vegan or vegetarian, you can still put it on there if you do like meatless Mondays, or you do it sometimes. There's one square I really want to call your attention to, because if you're like, I do not have any skills in this area, there's one right next to free space that's just, what's your special skill? You know, if you just want to tell everybody what is your special skill, that is okay. If you really get a jam, I might allow special skill on some other squares, but the point is to meet as many people as possible in the room that can satisfy one of these things. And I'd really like it if you don't get more than 5 from any one person. So just per chance that Jessa here is like a whiz at all of this and everybody gets the hang of it, that, oh my gosh, we just line up and go to her. Yeah. that is unacceptable. We need to like create a food web right here. And so I'd also love for every person to have their name on at least 5 people's cards and 5 different people on your card. Because it's going to require a fair amount of mixing up and mayhem for just a little while. So let me actually give you till 6:30, okay? If you get to jam, I might know some stuff too, but I'd really rather have it be the people in the room. Are you guys clear? Questions? Okay. All right, you guys, let's go bingo. Everybody go bingo. Make sure you get first and last name. Get up and move around. Oh, you have pens. Uh-oh.
Very in that book.
You got pens.
I know how I my best.
Why does that not matter?
I mean, we're right under it.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
I know my name right.
Okay.
I like to have feature card. And I don't want to. I do. But I thought it was
Sarah is.
Sarah and Sarah.
Doesn't have time.
And then you mark the last name too.
Oh.
When you get a chance.
Really?
I like the.
I got you.
For them sometime.
Yeah, for now.
You put it on mine. We can do this.
You are supposed to.
Are we allowed to put our own name up on that?
No. You sign mine? Name on mine? What are you good at? You can stick on one of those photographs, put your name on
I
it.
got
It's
Is that hers or what?
Yeah, this is.
Let me sign hers.
Are you,
I'm just kidding.
I'll take yours. Sure.
All this talking about food is kind of making me hungry, so I'm going to take a little break.
You got mine still, Mike?
Take a little break and eat while they're playing the game. You guys are amazing. I think everybody got at least 1 bingo, 2 bingo. Some people got the whole sheet filled out. Destiny, did you say, she said,
I almost filled every space twice.
she almost filled every space twice. Now that is some extra serious credit right there. Okay, so now do you kind of wonder, what am I going to do with all that knowledge? Because this is kind of interesting. But Destiny, like now that you have 2 on each, what would you do with that information?
It's good information to have. I know a lot of these are skills that I have that I could use to help some of my fellow AmeriCorps,
Great.
but also if I did need help, I have a list of people that could help.
Yeah, but what about, I mean, it took us less time than I thought it would to download that many specific skills. But don't you think that you probably have way more other skills that I didn't happen to put on there? But what I saw is often it was that one that I put to the right of free space that was anything. So many of you were like, that's the only one I don't have. And that's what I find is like with the time bank, when you say that time banking could be used for anything, people are like, well, I don't know what skills I have. So this time I thought, well, let me go a little bit specific so that we can see about a lot of the things that I've been talking about. And then, you know, if you wanted to, it might not be too hard to reconnect. You know, you guys see each other somewhat regularly. But what about if you want to ride to the grocery store and it's like a week from now or 3 months from now? Are you going to remember that piece of paper? Or are you going to remember, you know, who said it? Or like, just for example, who likes to cook? All right, so most of you only have one person's name down for that, right? But you might be sitting next to 4 other people that also, you know, love to do it, and they would have time, but there's no efficient way to share that information, right? Okay, everybody, what do I do, Destiny? Clap one, okay. All right, it's hard to like get everybody back after you've been unbottled, and that's good. But this is so exciting because I feel that you're excited. Do you not feel a little bit richer? Like, hey, this person's willing to give me a ride. This person's willing to share this with me. I mean, it's just, we unlock these riches. But if I don't show you this next part, I'm afraid that it's going to get trapped, you know, as just a hypothetical, because we'll forget or we'll be shy, or it won't be based on like, oh, well, they said they would do it, but it, you know, what do I have to do for them, right? Don't you kind of sometimes not want to ask somebody for help because you're like, well, I don't want to be on the hook for something. So let's talk about some game-changing ideas. We already played the game, but we're going to play part 2 of the game after this. Some of you said that you would like to learn foraging. Who said that? I know I put my name on a few.
Me.
Good. Okay. I am actually a licensed Indiana mushroom inspector, so I can literally, you know, like legally put an ID on something, and then a chef can buy something, or a farmer could sell it at a farmer's market or something like that. So I saw this beauty up in the tree, and I was like, it was about 20 feet high up in the tree. You know how I got that down? I put, what would MacGyver do? I don't even know if you guys know who MacGyver is, but it's like this telescoping, have you ever seen those telescoping saws that are used for, I went to the store and got one and sawed that puppy down. This is a chicken of the woods, actually. Yeah, I know. Well, I was like down on the ground looking, but yeah, that actually was about a 15-pound mushroom. And I mean, that made a lot of mushroom pasta. And I mean, it was just amazing. It was crazy. So I would see these from time to time, and I didn't really think that much about it beyond just, you know, feeding myself. And then one day, like sometimes I do social media work in Chicago, and one day I'd have to usually get up at like 5 or even 4 a.m. to take the train and get down there. And I was a little grouchy about it, and I saw that the farmer's market was going on down there in Daly Plaza, and I saw this farmer. He had this huge maitake mushroom. This is called hen of the woods. The other one I showed you is chicken of the woods. And I was like, wow, that is an incredible mushroom. Is that for sale? Like, I wasn't going to buy it because I was on my way to do training all day. And he was like, yes, it was $400, and it was purchased before the market opened. And I started thinking, why on earth did I just get up at 4 a.m. and take a train, and I'm going to be all day in an office building when I could stay in Indiana and go out in the woods and like get big mushrooms, you know? But I'd have to know where they are. But here's the thing, like talking with other people that are either they don't want mushrooms, or maybe they have woods, but they don't hunt mushrooms. They can let me hunt on their property. I could satisfy the need for you. What is your name again? Teresa, and you in the corner? Tony. And who else wants to come foraging? Say your name. Beth, Destiny, and Maddie. Anybody else want to come with us? So like I could spend an hour or 2 with you, and then you could like give me, you see one of those time credits that you guys have right there? We're going to get to spend those. So be thinking where you want to spend those. We're going to do like baby time banking. And so, yeah, it's like then you could learn the skill of how to safely identify a mushroom, and maybe not sell it because you're not licensed, but I could actually certify it for you, and you could use time credit for me to certify it if you wanted to sell it. But me working with a team of people, we were able to source mushrooms for 3 different chefs in the area and supply mushrooms for their farm to table dinners. Some people made a little money, you know, some people just said, take it, whatever, they took time credit. But it was just so fun to figure out a way to put this idea into time banking. Food swap, has anybody ever heard of food swaps before? Okay, well, food swaps are pretty cool. Some of these items might look a little familiar. If you see down on the little swap sheet, it says that I brought crabapple chutney, I think it says, or an apple barbecue sauce, all these different things that basically, you already saw that I'd foraged, so I didn't pay a whole lot for them. The jars I happened to get on FreeCycle. Have you ever heard of FreeCycle? FreeCycle rocks. It's like you can say what you want for free and people will say if they've got it or not. So I have gotten like 400 or 500 canning jars over the years from FreeCycle, totally for free. And then I also put stuff on there if I've got something that I don't want to throw away. So anyhow, you know, this cost me very little to bring. And then here's what I swapped it for. I swapped it for these items. This is my haul for that day. So I know you can't see exactly what I got there, but you know, it was like some hummus and some jam and some salad and homemade bread and, you know, some homemade soup, all different kinds of stuff. But it's pretty easy to make a lot of one thing. I told you before, I really didn't want like 17 jars of Cornelian cherries, you know, because I'm like, I get a little tired of that. But when I can take that as my food swap currency, I can go to an event where, have you ever been to a silent auction? Like you bid on items, but you're bidding money? Food swap is kind of like that, but instead of bidding money, you're saying, I would give you a jar of pickles for homemade bread. And people can say yes or no. They don't have to take what you've suggested, but it's pretty cool. You guys could even do that here if you wanted to. Here I am like creating more possible work for you. But, you know, if you're making one loaf of bread, it's not that much harder to make like 3 loaves of bread. You know, if you're already making the dough or if you're making jam or whatever, just to make a little extra.
You
and
guys
then
are good with swap. Maybe I'll do that in March or the editor's training.
Yeah.
And just send out a thing saying, bring this, bring that, have a little sign up sheet, but then you have to label what's in it.
Yes.
The ingredients.
Yeah,
Can we do it as more like June or July because that's in the garden?
That's fine.
there you go.
Yeah, I'll put a note for July, actually.
I definitely
That
have-
way-
I definitely have some like best practices, and because these happen like all over the country, you know, so it's not like you have to do it, but I can definitely talk you through like some guidelines, and I think conversing a little bit up front too, if you talk either in a group online or on Facebook or whatever, sometimes people will say, well, I'm vegan, or I'm, you know, gluten free, or I'm this or that. And just kind of knowing what some people's preferences are, their diet restrictions, not like you have to do that, but certainly you're going to be able to trade with more people if you've got, you know, that flexibility. It's a lot of fun. So this was, I call this is sort of like my gateway activity to other things that I'm about to show you. So Maddie said before, the Indiana Hope Center. Has anybody in the room ever been there? Have you ever been to Groverton, Indiana, or Grovertown? I've heard it said both ways. Okay. You've passed by it then, I can guarantee you, because there's very little in Grovertown, Indiana. It's right on 30. I don't even know what the north-south road is, where it's an intersection. What's it?
It's 900.
900?
The way I get here.
Okay, all right, thank you. So it's a place basically where groceries go when there's either, let's say, semis on their way to deliver a truckload of organic strawberries and it breaks down on Highway 30 or somewhere, you know, around here. They might send it to this place because by the time that truck gets back on the road, those strawberries are toast. They might get, like, have you ever been to Trader Joe's? Okay. Like Trader Joe's, they might have Christmas labeled coffees that have like special ginger spices or something like that in there. And then in January, they're like, oh, that's old news. That's last year. They send them to this place, you know, so they're like the salvage seconds. I mean, even if you shop at TJ Maxx, sometimes they have kind of that weird food section that's like specialty foods. It's not exactly what I call health foods. This is more like a grocery, but it's, you know, just stuff that can't be sold regularly. The very first time that I went there, this is the place I told you where I spent $100 and I got $600 worth of food. There were Trader Joe's organic free-range chickens, whole chickens. And the label was still on there. You could see the price. Some of them were like $19, $20, $23, and they were on sale for $4. And I was like, wow, this is a game changer. They're frozen. And so the key is Trader Joe's can't legally sell them past expiration date. So prior to expiration, they send them to this place and they put them in freezers versus making them available fresh. So you have to have a certain level of comfort. I have had I've had no problems like with meat or cheese or dairy or anything like that. I've had some crackers that I bought there that I'm like, these are a little stale, you know, and that's like the worst problem that I've had. if that gives you the EBGBs, I urge you punch past it and give it a shot because $500 savings in the first trip. It was pretty cool. But just as an idea, I mean, this is what it looks like. It's called a food ministry. And some people, when they see that, they think, oh, it's a food pantry. It's not a food pantry. It's a salvage grocery store. Anybody can shop there. It's not income dependent at all. It's really cool. And so let's see, what am I doing here? Oh yeah, this is a friend that I told about it. She said, I can't remember the last time I got 4 huge bags of groceries for $40, high quality stuff too, not processed junk. So that makes me very happy. And this is my spreadsheet from that first time when I went. I know you can't really read this, but I'll just kind of tell you what it says. Oh, here's the other bonus thing. Besides all the savings, after you check out, they'll be like, don't forget your free items on the way out. And I was like, what? Free items? Like Maddie was telling me, she was kind of trying to like impress me, I think, while I was getting my stuff together. She's like, I know the trick. Like you buy the big yogurt instead of the small packages, and that costs less because packaging. I'm like, you're still paying for yogurt, girl? like I was like, I did not pay for my yogurt. I'm like, I get my free items on the way out. Thank you very much. So this says actually, Dannon Activia yogurt cost $0. So that's pretty cool. So they have like yogurt very often for free. They have a lot of different kinds of bread for free. So this is like Thomas bagel thins cost $0. Eureka organic top seed bread, $0. I looked these things up online, and that top seed organic bread, that was going for as much as $7 for a loaf. It was $0, and it was not stale. So that was pretty cool. Trader Joe's light coconut milk. Does anybody use coconut milk? Okay, do you use the stuff that's like in the big things to drink, or do you use the little can?
No, she's got the big.
Okay. I usually do the cans, and I think the cans are usually like $1.50 to $1.80, depending on pricing. They were 10 cents each. So I bought several cases, and I was like giving them away, you know? And again, they're kind of like near expiration. But I don't know about you. If I went through my own pantry any day of the week, I could probably find cans that were a little bit past expiration, you know? So that's the thing too, where if you know somebody who's going to the grocery store and they know what you need or want, if people can pick it up and then share it, that's kind of cool. So if you're going to be doing a swap, maybe somebody goes there, it's a great deal. You can bring it and then share because you don't, in fact, want a case of coconut milk. Anyway, it just goes on and on. It's crazy, but there's even other stuff that's not food. Like there were these Martha Stewart binders there for like 50 cents, shampoo and conditioner for $1. That's usually much more. Cliff Bars, I got an entire case of Cliff Bars for $2. I mean, they're usually $2 each. So anyhow, you can kind of see these are real, actual amounts. And just to make it like more fun and interesting, I brought some of my goods, my excess goods, because I have turned into a little bit of a food hoarder. And these will in fact be some of the prizes. So you can look at dates, and if you're scared or whatever, then you're not gonna hurt my feelings. Whatever's not taken, I'll compost or what have you. But you know, so those will be the prizes. We'll get to that. But I do want to do a quick primer about time banking, because you acknowledge that, hey, it's cool. I have this list. I know who will do what, but you don't know who would do other stuff that you're going to need. And it doesn't really include people outside this room. John, for instance, who wrote down John that he might need a ride? Cool. All right, John, you're loved and you're not even here. So if you're watching this later, but think about all the John people, you know, that might need a ride, or they might want to cook for you, or they might want to do other things. We want to have a way to like weave them into this, right? So time banking is one approach. Since we're talking about food, I wanted to show you this. This was my very, very first ever time bank exchange, because when I was the first person in the time bank, you can imagine that was a little lonely. That's why who asked me, did you ask me, can I put down myself? I was like, no, you can't, because you can't really trade with yourself, you know? So we need to know. But I had to just go around and find people like, hey, do you want to trade with me? Do you want to trade with me? And this woman, she wanted to go on a wild edible hike with me. And she was a vegan pastry chef. Yes, she actually went somewhere like in Thailand to learn how to do this. And this is made with avocado
I am not understanding the term time.
Timing, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it hasn't been fully explained. Yeah, you're not alone. This might be a tiny bit out of order. So let me just get to, oh, there's my, oh, okay. You see that time banking in a nutshell. So there was one thing on your bingo that said, you know, would like to have cooking done for me sometimes. Did I say something like that? I'm usually somebody who likes to cook, so I might fill out both of those. I would both like to cook for you, but on those days when I'm getting up at 4 or 5 and going to Chicago, on those days, I would very much like for somebody to cook for me. So on this day, my friend Sarah, who's in the time bank, she brought me, or my husband actually, because I wasn't there, she brought this lentil soup, homemade bread, yogurt with fruit salad and a regular green salad. And it was, I don't know if I have the price up there. I want to say it was like $5.60 or something like that. And my husband was like, that is the best $5.60 we have ever spent. And she delivered it to her house because she was on her way to go and do another time bank trade. So to your point, I'm about to show you what time banking is, but I want to give you a few ideas of things that were real trades that people had done.
Does that typically work for families, or is it people who are on their own, or smaller, like 2-person families?
It can work for absolutely anybody. Absolutely anybody. In fact, you know, when I told you that this is kind of historic that we're here today and talking about this, I really hope to share this video recording. I hope it turns out well with Edgar Kahn. He is kind of widely recognized as the godfather of modern time banking. And I actually have a slide on him. I think it's the next one. But I've been working with him and his wife. I just talked with them yesterday and told them I was going to be here. And so they have planned this whole different way of introducing time banking that's called Gathering with a Purpose. So you really didn't know it. Maddie asked me to come here and share ways to eat well for less. And when I heard about this Gathering with a Purpose, I'm like, well, that's our purpose. You just have no idea that time banking could actually make that work a whole lot more effectively. You know, because if I just show you something and then you're like, well, I don't have a car, I can't get to the Hope Center, or I don't have time to can, or I don't have, you know, an apple tree, so I can't do this or that. But together, you can kind of see through that bingo game, you've got this. I mean, if you work together with at least, you know, 5 people to fill out your whole sheet, think of how much else there is, you know, waiting to be unleashed for you. So time banking in a nutshell, this is not very long, but it's basically, it's built on connections, which you guys just very nicely exemplified, reciprocity. So that means it's based on giving and receiving. And so a lot of people kind of get hung up with that because, I mean, aren't you called AmeriCorps volunteers? Is that right? So, no? Members. Okay. Sometimes I hear that. And sometimes we're, as time bankers, we're called volunteers as well. And it's not accurate. We're members. And it's based on reciprocity because for you to give, somebody else has to receive, right? And vice versa. So they're both really equally as important. And when we're talking about things like food preparation, I mean, sometimes people are like, a food swap, are you kidding me? I'm not going to eat something that somebody else prepared. I'm like, really? Wow, that's kind of sad in a way. So you don't ever go to potlucks, you never go to, you know, any kind of community functions. I think, you know, there is sometimes that scary factor of trusting people, but it feels really great to be trusted and to trust. So this is Edgar Kahn, who I mentioned to you before. He lives in Washington, D.C., and he helped get the first independent time bank started in St. Louis. He founded Time Banks USA in 1985. It's timebanks.org is their website. So it's now in 32 countries and 44 states. There are 500 independent time banks all around the United States and the world. And I am on a monthly conference call with a lot of the coordinators that do these things. So it's really a nice way to compare notes and find out what's going on. They can be organizations, they can be members, you know, so you asked me about families or single people, it can even get, you know, a lot different than that. But what it really is basically, it's just a medium of exchange that's not money. You know, we're also like geared into how much does it cost? And I even put dollar signs in the, you know, in the title of the slides, because that's what we're used to thinking about. We don't even think about our time being a possible medium of exchange because we don't have a way to do that usually. But when you think about it, we really do use other means of exchange like frequent flyer miles, SNAP, like food stamps. Those are other things that are generally accepted as money that aren't money, But when you join a time bank, what you do is instead of earning money, you get a time credit. So if you spent an hour giving somebody a ride, and by the way, it doesn't have to be exactly an hour, just like you don't go to the grocery store and everything's $1, $2, $3, sometimes it's $3.65. That's totally fine if you end up spending 3 hours and 20 minutes, totally fine. But for each of those, you would be earning a time credit, and then you can use those time credits to get anything that you want. And for people who do feel more wired to be a volunteer, they're like, I don't need anything. I just want to give. I want to be a volunteer. If that really is hard to get over, you can always donate time credits to somebody who's really in need. Like you were mentioning that your friend developed a sickness, and it sounds like she did a great job of taking it on and helping herself. But sometimes, we have debilitating illnesses, or God forbid, a house burns down, or a parent or spouse loses a job, or, who knows what. So you can always either give or receive time credits as a gift to help people, in need. So these are the core values that it's built on, is that everybody, and I do mean everybody, has something to offer. They have assets. Edgar Kahn wrote a book that was called, or is called, No More Throwaway People. And I really like that. I'm actually a master recycler and composter. And so many people they'll go crazy if you throw away a straw, but they don't really think anything about throwing away people. I mean, not literally, but just marginalizing people. I know people that are in wheelchairs, or people that have all kinds of different things that make it a little more difficult for them maybe to exchange time, but they have things they can do. So everything that you do to help somebody in their home, in the community, just like you already do, that counts as work, and it gives time credit for that. Again, it's stronger when there's a two-way street. The reciprocity doesn't have to be me foraging to get from Tony. Tony, what did you say that you like to do?
I like to go out to the woods like you and forage. My brother-in-law has a book of 400 mushrooms
Oh, that's great.
that I got from the natural preserve.
And that's the cool thing too, is when you can't even remember, wait, am I giving or receiving? Sometimes it does get pretty fuzzy. But what did somebody write down that Tony would like to do for them? What was it?
Grocery shop.
Grocery shop? Okay. And you know what? See, I actually really kind of love to grocery shop. So I'm like, if you said, well, I want you to teach me how to forage, but that's the thing I do, in a barter system, we wouldn't be able to do a trade, right? Because I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, Tony, I really like grocery shopping, so I don't want what you're offering. But with the time trading, you just bank the hours, and then I can take that and help anybody else, right? Because when you spend money, it's not like you say, oh, well, you can't have my money because I'm not getting money back from you. That makes no sense. It's an actual bank. And so as you can see, we are stronger together. We thought of people outside the room that we could involve in this, and just together, you guys unleashed a lot of energy. And then we're going to treat each other with respect. We respect one another's time. We're not expecting just to always be getting rides from somebody, and that person doesn't have needs, or that person's not going to get, their stuff taken care of. So it can be done member to member, or this is what I think would be kind of interesting, is so many of you are in organizations. And Claire and I were talking that an organization she worked with previously, the Art Barn in Valparaiso, they're one of our organizational members, and they've actually had some help with events, staffed by time bankers. So if you guys want to have a time bank amongst yourselves, that's totally cool. Or if you want to loop in, to the community time bank, that would be great too. So you can do one member doing something for many people, or member to member, or many members with many members. Can you think of some ways that might look? Like one-to-one, it's pretty clear.
That would like be babysitting for somebody, and then they would mow your yard or something.
Exactly.
Somebody else's yard.
Yep, that could be a one-to-one. Or I will say too that I am the part-time coordinator for a nonprofit in Valpo called Valpo Next. And so many times people in the community say, oh, I'd love to come to the meeting, but I got to get a sitter, got to get a sitter, got to get a sitter. So if we had like a couple of babysitters that would be willing to watch, people's kids that were in a meeting, maybe it would be more than one babysitter watching more than one people's kids. That would be a many to many, right? Make sense? And then, Sojourner Truth, you work first? Okay. And so with your walk, do you have any extra staffing needs for that big event? And you don't have them every day, right? And maybe some particular needs that you don't have volunteers on the roster?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes like, doing a website or some weird thing comes up, you could dip into the time bank to see if that person could help your nonprofit, not for money, but for time credit. So you're not technically asking them to volunteer, but if they wanted, here's what I think. If people are so hung up on being volunteers, I'm like, they're kind of leaving money on the table. Because if they were to donate their time credit, exactly. Thank you, Maddie. She said they're almost undervaluing themselves, because if they could, I already told you on the last slide that if you don't need that time credit, you can gift it. Well, guess what? You could gift it to a nonprofit, right? So if you had somebody that's your awesome volunteer and they always want to, I don't know, you probably have somebody like this. So like, I want to bring the treats, or I want to register the people at the walk. And they do everything, but maybe they have a need, maybe they pulled their shoulder while they were helping the runners or something. Well, you could gift them a massage from another time banker. You could kind of take care of your volunteers with these extra things that you're taking. Yes,
So
ma'am.
If she had 10 people sign up or donate an hour of
Mhm.
their time or whatever,
Mhm.
then is she responsible for paying them back, or she doesn't have to be a member of the time bank or anything?
We're getting to that. These are all excellent questions, but you can see how it does get more complicated than just what you wrote on your, paper. It's a great start. And so I don't want to overwhelm or confuse it. I want you just to get like your big toe in the water. And if it's something that you want to do, I am happy to come back or meet separately or whatever to take this to the next level. But we will practice a little bit. So sometimes people are just like, well, where does this come from? Like, we're minting money. How does that work? And what if, I want some help with my big event, like the Art Barn had the Art Blitz, and they needed a lot of help, and they didn't have that many hours stowed away yet. Is that a problem? Would Visa think it was a problem? They'd want to charge you interest, whatever. There's no such thing as interest in the time bank. It does not matter. So how could John do that? Or how could the Art Barn do that? They would go into time credit debt. And that's fine, because it's all built on reciprocity. We just believe that if you're getting, you're gonna give eventually. It's fine. And the Art Barn has lots of volunteers too, so there's that mutualism. Like, we just keep paying it forward, and we trust one another to make good on our commitments. So yeah, it's just, I got to tell you, when I came into this, I was a little nervous because accounting, not my top subject. I was kind of worried, will the debits balance? Will the credits balance? Think about how many people volunteer already, and nobody cares, nobody knows, right? I mean, as long as everybody is getting what they need, it almost doesn't quite matter. But the time bank software that we use does help to keep this all straight. So anyhow, we've already kind of gone through this, like why you might try it. I think you already saw about the services offered. Some of you were excited about maybe learning some new things. The financial savings, certainly, besides like shopping at the Hope Center, with me getting somebody to help me with my yard that's on Time Bank, with me getting somebody to help me with all kinds of house projects and other things I would typically be spending money for, the savings are much more than grocery. It's like all these things that you would normally be, spending money for, and just doing good. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't get a bunch of time bankers together and clean up a neighborhood or put in a community garden or whatever, and you make a lot of new friends along the way. So, the reason that you've got these little credits in front of you is because usually when you start talking about time banking, it is kind of weird. You're like, well, I'm not a member, I don't get this. But what I want to encourage you to do is take that time credit, that little piece of paper. This is going to be legal tender within this room. We're going to, if you feel like you want to, and I really hope you'll want to, is look at that sheet, your bingo sheet, and see what sparked joy. Has anybody been watching that Marie Kondo thing about sparking joy? What sparks joy with you? Like, what sounds really fun? Like, hey, you know what? I actually would like somebody to cook for me, and here's who would do it. Or I actually would like to, work in a garden this summer, and here's who told me they would do it. You have the means, you have a time credit. You could go ask that person and say, will you honor this? I will give you, or I'll give you 1 hour, credit if we can, hook up and you'll help me plant my garden this summer. Will you do that? Yes. Okay. Now you have a time credit. You can spend it with that person or anybody else. So I would love for each of you to kind of know how you're going to spend that credit and make a little, tentative date in the future of where you're going to get that done. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so I don't know if I should let you do that first or if we should do prizes first. You guys were really fast with the bingo. You want to do the, I'm gonna let you do that first, and I'm gonna hope that prizes will get you back in your seats within like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. What do you think? Is that crazy? I know that clapping trick now. So is that clear? You're gonna find somebody, and if you can't find anybody, you're having trouble, you come to me and I will help you get that time credit spent. But the idea is that you're gonna give an hour or get an hour. I don't really much care which one you're gonna do at this point, because once you get the hang of it, it keeps going. Yes, ma'am.
I just have one more question.
Yes.
Theory. Okay, say I want some help with my garden,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm willing to help her for 4 hours at her walk.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like, I'm not helping anybody in particular, so then how would I actually, just by the goodness of people's hearts, somebody would come help me when I ask for it? Is that
Yeah.
how?
Yeah, and so now you're getting to be why like we kind of need a time bank to help with those like more complex things. So for right now, I would try just like an hour. So maybe
So just one-on-one if I have a particular project I wanted to help.
right, just because without the software, it does get quite tricky. I do have a thing at the end where I've created a group, and if you guys want to, opt into that, then I will help you, create a time bank. I had been charging for volunteer insurance previously, but I understand you guys are all already using the same insurance that we use, which is SEMA. And I was in Florida a couple weeks ago, and like they don't charge for that. They're like, just get people connecting and sharing. It really doesn't matter, So there really is no catch. It's just if you want to help somebody, go find that person who would enjoy your help, and then so you don't feel like put out, get something for yourself too. And if you can't find anybody within the room that's willing to, give you what you need, let me know and I will hook you up. Okay. All right. So let's take, it's coming up on 7. Let's see if we can end by 10 or 15 after. And just let me know if you're having any trouble. Is anybody shy? I could be the caller too. Is anybody shy? I could be the matchmaker.
Okay, I'll tell you what to do. You like to cook?